Hello and welcome to the Every Quarter broadcast. This is episode number 17 and the date is 17th January 2024. In the next series of videos that I'm going to do on the channel, I want to focus on the bond prospectus. The bond prospectus is an invitation that is sent by the Bank of Zambia on behalf of the Zambian government, inviting investors to invest in government bonds. There is a prospectus that is published, that is sent out in the public for every bond auction. And the idea behind the prospectus is that investors need to be given all the necessary information regarding the bond auction so that they know what they are getting into, for lack of a better term, so that they have all the information that is needed for them to make an informed decision as to whether or not they want to invest in that particular bond. And so in this particular video, I will look at the two general conditions of issue. So there's a section in a bond prospectus, it's section D. It's a very last section in the bond prospectus for GRZ bonds. It outlines the general conditions of issue. And I want to discuss the two general conditions, the two key general conditions of issue that you find there. There's condition number 1 and number 2. One relates to redemption of a bond, and the other one relates to rediscounting of a bond. On the face of it, when you read these conditions, they may look like they are contradictory, meaning that they should not coexist in a given auction, but they are very different things, and that's what I want to discuss in this episode. So condition number 1, general condition number 1 of issue for GRZ bonds is that the government of the Republic of Zambia reserves the right to redeem the 7, 10 and 15-year bond before maturity. This call option may be exercised after the bond has run 60% of its life. The second general condition of issue is that the Bank of Zambia will not rediscount any bonds that have been issued. So the first condition again talks about redemption. The other condition talks about rediscounting. If you do not make the key distinction between redemption of a bond and discounting of a bond, these two conditions might seem like they are in conflict and therefore should not coexist, but they are not, because redeeming of a bond and rediscounting of a bond are two different things, and that's what I want us to look at. So let's move over to the next slide. So redemption versus rediscounting. So what is redemption of a bond? So redemption of a bond is initiated by the issuer. In this particular case, the government of the Republic of Zambia through Bank of Zambia. Okay, so they initiate the redemption of a bond. Okay, so as an issuer, BOZ or GRZ in this particular case, whichever you want to look at it, will initiate redeeming of the bond. The bondholder receives full face value for that particular bond. And normally the Bank of Zambia or government would want to do this to manage debt, and basically in response to some monetary policy. And for our current prospectus for the bonds that will be issued in January of 2024, the condition states that borrowers may redeem the 7, 10, or 15-year bond after it has run 60% of its life. So they reserve the right to redeem. So basically, they reserve the right to tell the investor that this particular bond will not run full term, and we will give you back. Basically, they stop the interest payments, the coupon payments for the remaining period, and then the bondholder receives full face value. That is normally what would happen. So there's a specific way in which they would obviously do the calculations. But ideally, the bondholder receives the full face value, and because the Bank of Zambia has redeemed that bond, it means the bondholder stops receiving coupons for the remaining period, because they now no longer hold that bond because it has been redeemed by the Bank of Zambia. So that's what redemption is about. Rediscounting is very different. So there's a subtle difference. So rediscounting is initiated by the bondholder. In this particular case, it would be the investor. So the investor would approach the bank, the central bank, the Bank of Zambia, and say, and basically sell the bond that they have at a discount. Okay, so this is normally done in cases where, for whatever reason, the investor wants to have early access to their cash, meaning the face value, and this would normally be because there's still a lot of time, there's still some time at the very least between the time that the rediscounting is being initiated and the maturity of the bond. So the investor may, in jurisdictions where rediscounting is allowed, the investor will typically initiate the rediscounting process and through that process, sell the bond back to the central bank at a discount. So in this particular case, they do not receive the full face value of the bond. And like I said, this is used for early access of cash. This is an investor who needs to access their cash early. They have done their mathematics, and then they rediscount the bond. Basically, they sell the bond back to the central bank at a discount. So in our current prospectus, again for the bonds that will be issued in January of 2024, and I believe that will remain the same throughout the year. This seems to be the practice here in Zambia, is that the Bank of Zambia will not rediscount any bonds issued. So that's the difference between redeeming of a bond and rediscounting of a bond. Redeeming of the bond, it's the Bank of Zambia in this particular case, or the bondholder, the bond issuer, initiating the process, and rediscounting is the investor reinitiating the process. With that understanding, we can go back to that section in the general conditions of use for the bond prospectus and read those two conditions in context. 1. The government of the Republic of Zambia reserves the right to redeem the 7, 10, and 15-year bond before maturity. This score may be exercised after the bond has run 60% of its life. 2. The Bank of Zambia will not rediscount any bonds. So those two are not contradictory because they are talking about two different things. I hope this is clear. If you have any questions, any comments, any more clarifications that I need to make concerning this or any other topic that I've talked about or yet to talk about, I'll be looking forward to your comments and questions, and I should be able to respond in the quickest possible time. It's almost what? This is 7:18 p.m. Central African time. I sign off from Lusaka. Thank you.